There we go. We are live. Hello. How are we all doing? It feels like it has been months. It has been a stressful couple of weeks, so I am very much looking forward to this. Isn't it supposed to have started? Apologies, I was, 60 seconds late. I do apologize. I do apologize. I was just getting a couple of things sorted. YouTube has a little bit of a delay as well. But hello, how are we doing? Hello, Blake. Hello, Sarah. How are we? Hello, Avil. How are we feeling? My goodness me. I just need a McLaren masterclass here to really like G me up a little bit. It's been a tough couple of weeks since the last Grand Prix in Saudi Arabia, but we'll catch up with everything. Apologies for the lack of content. It's been a little bit of a weird one, but hello, Josh. Hello, that one meme guy. How you doing? How are we feeling? Are we looking forward to Miami? It's a bit of a weird sprint, isn't it? I always forget that Miami is a sprint weekend now. It just doesn't seem like the most sprinty track that should be. Past 6 months membership, that is goodness gracious. That has gone by quickly. My God. I was just thinking back then. I was like, wow. Okay. Hello, Sally. How you doing? Hello, Noah. Sarcastically hopeful. New here. Can somebody please explain how this works? Welcome. Join in, subscribe, like, the good normal stuff. And we will be watching the sprint qualifying session in just under half an hour, about 25 minutes, live with one another and a lovely community of people to chat about it with as we go through. Hello, Abar. Welcome. Stroll is going to extend his Q1 exits this weekend. Yes, 75 in his career compared to 47 compared to his teammates in that time. Obviously, he's had teammates here, there, and everywhere. He's had teammates at Williams, teammates at Racing Point. I was trying to remember what it was before Aston Martin. But yeah, Lance Stroll, not the greatest of records. And Aston Martin not looking like they're going to have the best of years. So Lance Stroll could be well clear with that record. I think it was Kevin Magnussen had 74 Q1 exits. But if you look at he'd been at Haas for a lot of that time. Almost all of that time. So it's a bit of a different game when you've been in a Racing Point and you've been in an Aston Martin. And as I said, your teammates in that time comparatively have only dropped out of Q1 about half as many times as you have. So it's an awkward statistic for Lance Stroll to take. Hello, Manuel D. Finally, a race I don't have to ruin my sleep for. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Evening one in the UK. Obviously, we've got people from here, there, and everywhere. So you never know what people are up to. Some people I've had in the chat before, they're up at like 3 a.m. It's chaos. I don't know how they're even functioning, let alone getting involved in the chat. Stroller's getting pole. Has points. Should we get into the predictions for this weekend? I obviously put out the predictions for you guys to get involved in. If you want to get involved in those in the future, they go out on the community tab, or the posts tab, it's now called actually, on YouTube, the Monday of every race week. And it's an opportunity for everybody to vote as a collective as to what they think will happen come this weekend. And you get to vote on all the different things, from the winner of the Grand Prix, the drivers you think are most likely to be on the podium, the surprise package for the weekend, who you think is going to have a good outside shout at a weekend, the best team, and of course then a couple of negatives at the bottom there, which driver you think is going to struggle the most, and also which team you think is going to have the worst weekend. And you get to vote on all of them, and then I put together all of your votes to find your predictions. Shall we have a little chat about them and go through them, because they are a little bit interesting, aren't they? A little bit interesting. 1,300 here, one of the few times. Oh, 1,300. I thought that is your time. I got you. 1 a.m. though, Taha. Goodness gracious me. Finally, one in your time zone. I am very much looking forward to the European stint that is just about to occur. It's going to be a nice one for me. Your opinion on the livery? Which one? There's a few kind of special liveries this weekend that we can also have a little chat about. Some are good, some are absolutely horrendous. Not, pointing fingers, but Ferrari. Let's talk about your predictions first and foremost, though. Oscar Piastri is now the man to beat, of course, leading the Drivers' Championship and starting to get your guys' votes more often than not as the winner of each of these races. It was the first time he'd been ahead of Norris, was coming into the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in terms of the voting for who was going to win the Grand Prix. He's managed to maintain that after turning the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix into his third victory of the season. And it does just feel like Oscar Piastri is in the form of his life and is hitting the ground running just at the right time this season. Still a long time to go. Only 5 races completed out of 24. But Oscar Piastri seems to be on an absolute sprint right now. And if he can lock in a lot of points, we saw it with Max Verstappen last season. If you can lock your points in early, you put yourself at the top of the standings, then everybody else is chasing. And it's just that little bit harder to be the chasing driver. Of course, gives you an extra bit of emphasis when you're the chasing driver and you've got a little bit more kind of pressure on you if you're the top driver of the championship already. But also, as we saw with Max Verstappen last year, it then allows you to play the game a little bit. It allows you to have a little look at what's going on behind you, what's going in and around the races, and put in the performances when you need to. Like we saw Max Verstappen step up. Whenever Lando Norris seemed to have a good weekend, Max Verstappen had a good weekend too. Whenever Max Verstappen had a bad weekend, he made sure Lando Norris had a bad one as well. That's what you can do when you're leading the championship. Then you've got Lando Norris in second place and Max Verstappen in third place just behind. So maybe we'll see a Max Verstappen win here. Red Bull have pushed forwards their big upgrade. So big upgrade moving forwards. Was supposed to come in for Imola, but they've actually added it on this weekend to the floor of their car. Maybe that's the turning point that Red Bull need to really kind of click into gear this year, because it's been very up and down, hasn't it? I know Max Verstappen won the Japanese Grand Prix and has been on the podium fairly consistently, but there's still been a little bit of a fractious feel around Max Verstappen's season so far, and especially the relationship that he's got with Red Bull at the moment, and the fact that they haven't been able to continue the dominance that we saw at the beginning of this regulation cycle. Throughout 2024, it started to ebb away from him, but he managed to still get that title. This year, you'd say he's still in the title battle, but at the moment, he's third or maybe even fourth favorite, depending on how much you anticipate Mercedes and George Russell getting better as the season progresses. But I think that top 3 is the general top 3 we're going to see for the majority of the races up until maybe Spain, where you've got that change of front wing, maybe an adaptation and some upgrades from some other teams as well. Could be that we see a change to that top 3. But at the moment, seems pretty locked in, and you guys seem pretty consistent on your voting for who's going to be where. Totally forgot there's a sprint. Miami does feel like a weird sprint weekend. Said that at the beginning of the live stream. It doesn't quite remind me of a sprint weekend yet, even though it's been a sprint weekend last year. And we've only been in Miami, what is this, the 3rd time we've been at the Miami Grand Prix? So it should really feel like a sprint weekend, but it just doesn't quite seem like the track that is made for being a sprint weekend. You guys are expecting the Red Bull upgrades to at least click a little bit. Yuki Tsunoda, your surprise good package for the weekend. If you didn't see, he did manage to take part in a Red Bull test over the kind of 2-week period that we've had since Saudi Arabia. It didn't go amazingly well, though. They had the test, but they didn't want to bring any wet weather tires because you're only allowed so much testing throughout the season. And they basically wanted to get Yuki Tsunoda in the car in the most common conditions that he's going to be racing in. So fairly dry and fairly cool. Like that is the general vibe for a lot of the races that we go to throughout the season. And then it rained and they didn't bring any wet weather tires. So Yuki Tsunoda didn't get any running in the morning. And then when he finally did get in the car, there was an issue in the afternoon session. So Yuki Tsunoda, although he did have a Red Bull test, there wasn't a lot really going on throughout that test. He didn't really get to be in the car as much as he would have liked to be. So I'm a bit 50-50 on whether or not Yuki Tsunoda will step up this weekend and whether or not Yuki Tsunoda will be able to do the business that we're kind of expecting him to do at some point. It's got to click, really, hasn't it? Because as I say, he's not just trying to outperform Liam Lawson, because that's kind of where the barrier was set at the beginning of the season after those 2 races where Liam Lawson was horrendous. He's also actually got to outperform Sergio Perez. Like, the whole point that Red Bull got rid of Sergio Perez was to try and upgrade the driver in that second seat, surely. You know, you don't get rid of a driver to make your team worse. And Sergio Perez is, at the moment, proving that although he was doing pretty awfully, maybe he was actually doing quite a good job, which seems really, really counterintuitive, but that's just the way it is. Have you seen that Miami's staying on the calendar until 2041? Yes. I think a lot of the races now, especially some of the newer races, are going to aim to get very, very long contracts. So I think, like, you're seeing it already with things like Vegas. I think we'll get a similar kind of extension, maybe not 2041, but yeah, I think a lot of races are going to aim to get 10-year contracts, because not only do they want to be part of the next regulation cycle in 2026, they're also probably looking at the regulation cycle from 2030 onwards and eyeing that up, because that's also going to be quite a lucrative time to be in Formula One, assuming that it continues to grow in the same way that it does. So I think a lot of the teams and a lot of the circuits, especially because we've kind of heard that the calendar won't really get any bigger than maybe 25, 26 races. They're trying to, I think the drivers and the teams are sort of putting a cap on that when it comes to the next cycle of regulations, and obviously the discussions that they get to have with the FIA and putting in place the kind of Formula One rules in and amongst it. So I think a lot of the teams will be aiming to cap the races at like 25, 26 if they can, and therefore a lot of the tracks will be wanting to get really long contracts on the board so that they don't get, you know, undercut by another new track that wants to join the calendar. Rajiv, shout out. Sure. There you are. Rajiv Nehal. Max to win the sprint. Ooh, ouch. Hello, Anish. How's my day been? Pretty busy, but good. I'm glad we're back into the rhythm of a race weekend. I'm enjoying the fact there's a sprint as well. 4 streams coming your way and a bonus stream. If you are a member, you get that post-race discussion. It's quite nice, actually. It's very relaxed. We just kind of have a bit of back and forth about the race that has just happened. We get to watch the podium ceremony. It's a nice little back and forth, an enjoyable little sort of half an hour to an hour, just winding down after the race and delving into some of the controversies that always come along with a Formula One Grand Prix weekend. But yeah, in terms of Yuki surprise, linking all the way back to that, what would be a good weekend for Yuki Tsunoda? Points, obviously. But, you know, whereabouts in the points does Yuki really have to be? Or is it just within a certain distance of Max? You know, is it, okay, if he qualifies within 3/10 of Max, 4/10 of Max, is that okay? If he finishes within 2-3 positions on the track, is that good enough? It's kind of difficult to know, isn't it? When you've got a little bit of uncertainty about Red Bull and that upgrade as well until we get into sprint qualifying and get into the sprint and know what kind of pace they've got, because the one free practice session, I don't think ever gives you a true reflection of how the weekend is going to go. I don't like how all of these tracks put in unlimited money. Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, right? Especially the newer tracks, they are bankrolled by incredibly rich people. And in fact, a lot of the US races have been, well, especially Vegas. Vegas is obviously owned by Formula One anyway. It is Formula One's own brand, the Las Vegas Grand Prix. But even places like Miami, the Spanish Grand Prix, the Madrid Grand Prix that's kind of come in has been one that Formula One have been really pushing to get onto the calendar. So it's like those kind of races they will want to keep for a long time. How long will it take Yuki to get a podium? I think it's an if Yuki can get a podium rather than a when, to be honest. I think it's going to be really tough. You look at the two McLarens at the moment, seem like they're always going to be there. Max, therefore, is then in the way because you're basically saying, when will Yuki be able to beat Max? And that is an almost impossible question, right? I think to answer that question, you've got to go, when is Max going to have either a problem or a crash? Because I just can't see a world where Yuki Tsunoda beats Max in a race weekend right now without it going terribly, terribly wrong for Max Verstappen. Because as you voted for, best team at the moment looks like McLaren right now. Verstappen's there, Russell's then there. Ferrari, I think, won't be too far adrift. Like, Leclerc has still had a fairly decent start to the season, considering the car that he's been given. I think it's tricky. Then you've got struggle Lewis Hamilton. Again, what does that constitute? I feel like a real struggle for Lewis is, again, just being that final driver of the top 7. Like, at the moment, if you look at the Drivers' Championship, Antonelli outscoring Lewis Hamilton at the moment. I know you've got to add in the fact that he was disqualified from China, but you know that plays into it, and they're not going to be giving those points back. So Hamilton needs to make up those points that he lost in China at some point. And the fact that Antonelli is well ahead, and the fact that George Russell is on like more than double the points than Lewis Hamilton right now, it's got to be a bit of a kick in the teeth, really. I know that he's made that move to Ferrari more so thinking about 2026 and beyond. Like, he's kind of half hinted at that previously, but even so, you're maybe expecting a little bit more from Lewis Hamilton going into this weekend. And then finally, your flop team, oops, wrong one, is Stake Sauber, and I think that's pretty fair as it goes. Before we kind of delve into the driver standings, I'll pop it up on the screen, but I do think we do need to talk about the special liveries this weekend. Praise Red Bull, or RB, for getting it pretty much spot on. There's been some very nice pink liveries this year, which is a bit of a weird one for Alpine, because they are supposed to be the kind of pinker team than anyone else, but Haas had a pink livery in Japan with the cherry blossom, RB going with a pink livery, looking pretty good. Like, I really, really like the RB livery. And then on the flip side of that, you've got the absolute worst livery I think I've ever seen with Ferrari. Like, what have Ferrari done to that car? Why on earth they've put that kind of blue band? I know it's for HP, and I know it's, you know, blue for Miami. And they did this last year where they were like, we're going to be blue. And then it was just a red car with like a blob of blue on it. Like, why don't they just commit? Why don't they just go for it? It's one race. And I know the red of Ferrari is so iconic, but it's just a one-off. It's a one-off thing. You could say that the papaya of McLaren is pretty iconic for them at the moment. I know, not quite as iconic as the red of Ferrari, but you know, occasionally they go against it. Occasionally they get rid of their core color, and Ferrari just never seem to do that. I suppose they had the yellow, but even then it was yellow and red. They never really commit to a livery at Ferrari, and I just hate it. Like, I just wish they'd go one time and really commit to a livery. The only time they've committed to a livery was when they did the Monaco livery for Charles Leclerc, but that's just red and white anyway, because it was the flag of Monaco. So it just didn't matter. It was like, oh, it's so frustrating. But yeah, the little bit of blue on the front wing and the little bit of blue on the rear wing, not sold. Not for me, I'm afraid, Ferrari. I need a little bit more from you moving forwards to really get behind a special livery for the weekend. Let's talk about the Drivers' Championship, because obviously it changed hands at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend. Oscar Piastri became the first Australian since Mark Webber, his manager, to lead the World Championship, back when Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel were battling it out for championships back in the day at Red Bull. Piastri jumping to the top of the list. Norris now 10 points adrift. Verstappen 12 points adrift. Like, I thought Verstappen would be a little bit further behind by this point, considering the amount of negativity that there seems to be around him and a Red Bull, but he just does keep delivering the performances, doesn't he, Max? It's always a little bit better than you kind of expect it to be. Like, you expect Red Bull to have a tough weekend, and even when they do, Max Verstappen just makes it that little bit better for himself. Like, he does something a little bit special. And then you get those extra points on the board, which keeps him in contention. Then you've got George Russell. He's starting to ebb away a little bit, only because he's more than a win off of the championship lead now. And I think that's always quite a critical point to be. If you're more than 25, 26 points and you're further away from the championship lead than a victory, that's a substantial amount of points that you need to make up. And not impossible, still a very long way to go. I do think George Russell is still in contention. But then everyone below Russell, I'd kind of say, not for me anymore. I think Charles Leclerc's too far off of it now, which is such a shame because he should have been the kind of guy that was in contention for the championship alongside the McLarens, right? That was what we were hoping for and expecting coming into the season, considering how well Ferrari managed to cope with the end of last year. There was a point in the middle of the season where Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri were the two most informed drivers on the grid. Ferrari then had that upgrade in Monza, and it looked really, really great. Then it's just so annoying. And like, I can't imagine what it's like to be a Ferrari fan, because it must just be so grating that you're like, yes, we've got everything. It's looking fairly good coming into the start of the season, and they're just so far adrift. Like, they're not even close to winning a Grand Prix where we thought they'd be in the championship battle. So annoying. Antonelli in 6th place, 38 points. Hamilton, as we just touched upon, 7th place, kind of worst of that top 7. And I know we're missing a Red Bull from the top 8, you could argue. But, you know, the Tsunoda, Lawson stuff going on has just meant that it's been pretty horrendous for them. So it's going to be a top 7 this year. And then maybe Yuki Tsunoda can climb his way back into the top 8 by the end of the season. But I just can't see Yuki Tsunoda finishing any higher than 8th in the championship. Albon, Ocon, Stroll have kind of been the 3 drivers that have been most in form. Stroll falling off of it a touch now. Like, Stroll got those 10 points in on the board fairly early on, first couple of races. Last few races, it's started to dip. And I think Aston Martin just looks so far off of, again, where we maybe expected and thought they would be. I know they're focusing on 2026, but there's focusing on 2026, and there's literally just like throwing a season away. Like, that is what Aston Martin are doing at this point. They are just chucking 2025 in the bin, not even considering it as effectively a season, and just deciding that they're going to be there. Who's been the worst rookie so far this year? I would say Jack Doohan. And it feels a little bit harsh. Ollie Behrman obviously had a spin in free practice 1. Ollie Behrman has had a couple of crashes, but then all of them kind of have. Doohan had a big crash in Australia. Hadjar crashed on the formation lap in Australia. Hello, Pascal, mate. But yeah, I'd say Doohan has had the worst season so far. But it's not by like much. I don't think he's been horrendously bad. You know, even Gasly has only managed to get 6 points on the board. Which, when you consider Albon has been 20 points to the good, or 14 points to the good on Gasly, it's not been the worst start to the season for Jack. I don't think any of the rookies have been absolutely awful. You know, none of them have been like Latifi, Mazepin, horrendous in terms of that. Even Gabriel Bortoleto, I know he's 20th in the championship, but that's more just because he's in a Stake Sauber and a lot of the time hasn't really had the opportunity to show his quality because he's in a car that is just off the pace. Hello, Claire. How's it going? Hope you're well. Thank you very much. Hope you're well too. Jason Phillips. Where am I from? Norwich, which no one knows where that is. We've got a football team that wears yellow. That's about it. Bortoleto, just give me a good car already. Yeah, Bortoleto's a weird one because obviously he's thinking about Audi, isn't he? He's got his eyes on that Audi project. and not a lot else at this point in time. I think he's realizing. Thank you, Antonio, for becoming a member once again. 33 months. Goodness gracious, big. Getting towards the 3-year mark, which makes me realize how long this channel has been going. And it's wow. To another triple header. Yes. Yes, indeed. I can't actually. I feel like the triple headers are great, but then also it makes me realize like how quickly the season has gone. We're over a fifth of the way through the season already, and it just seems like minutes ago that we were at testing, and it's so frustrating because I haven't been able to do a lot of the stuff I've wanted to do this season because still waiting on the house move, still trying to get a new job, still trying to do other stuff, and it's so annoying because I've got so many things that I'd like to be able to do, and I promise they will come. But yeah. We're getting there. How has Stroll got more points than Alonso? Where has he got those 10 points? Yeah, he just had a really good start to the season, did Lance Stroll. I think he scored points in the first... It was the first 2 weekends, definitely. Maybe even the first 3 weekends? I might be making that up. I can't actually remember now. He was in and amongst the point scoring. Let me have a look. Let me remind myself. Feels like a long time since Saudi Arabia, let alone since Lance Stroll scored points. Let's have a look. No, it was just the first 2 weekends. Oh, yeah, of course, in Japan he came last. First 2 weekends. 8 points in Australia, 2 points in China. Very disappointed Miami is staying for so many years. It's a weird one, isn't it? No one really... I think it's just such a horrible track. Like, I don't think there's any getting away from it. Like, it's just such a tricky track to overtake. There's no perfect places to really go for it. Like, even because of the chicane that goes under the kind of bridge before the DRS zone, it just elongates the cars away from each other too much, and then you can't really overtake unless you got a ridiculous speed advantage on the car in front of you. You can kind of go down into turn 1 and have a go, but even then there's not a massive straight between turn 19 and turn 1, so it's just like annoying. Yeah, it needs work doing to it, but the problem is the areas that need changing, they can't change because apparently they're there because of the nature of where the circuit is and the fact that it's got to go under a road and under a or around a stadium, and like it just doesn't quite work, does it? Especially for Formula One and the cars as they are right now. You never know. Maybe 2026. Change up to the regulations, the changing of the cars. We can be hopeful that it clicks into gear a little bit and maybe it works more for the cars in that build rather than in the build as they are now. But shall we start looking at qualifying? Because the cars are going to make their way out on track fairly soon. In fact, this is a little bit behind my live stream, so I'm just going to change this and apply this. So it's going to freeze probably for a moment. But there we are. And we get into it. Sub from Scotland. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. As I say, lots more to come on the channel. And there will be like long form videos once again. I've so many that like I've kind of got half prepped, but just haven't had the time to do because I don't know if you've ever done like a job application, but apparently they now take 4 hours a piece. I did a job application yesterday morning before work, and it took me 3.5 hours to apply for one job. So that's where we're at. And therefore, that 3.5 hours that normally would go towards a video of some kind or maybe some editing was completely snapped away from it. But it will be. Mr. V just made a video fixing the Miami track. Yeah, he's very good at that. I love Mr. V's track videos. It's kind of his thing now, isn't it? Like, he makes tracks from logos. He fixes tracks. He makes tracks worse. He's a track man. And I'm a big fan of Mr. B. I mean, literally, I've got one of his hats above my head. Great guy. Really, really like him. And really enjoy his helmet. Is that an F1 style helmet in the background? It is not. It is a motorcycle helmet in the background because my dad races motorbikes. I wish he was a Formula One driver. You know, that would be, my upbringing would have been very different, I'd imagine. But unfortunately, no. He's a two-wheeled man rather than a four-wheeled man. Carlos Sainz then in the Williams car. I'm actually very excited to see what Sainz can do for the rest of the season. It started a little bit slow, didn't it, for the Spaniard? But it feels like it's really starting to find the rhythm now. He was very good in Saudi Arabia, finished ahead of Alex Albon in Saudi Arabia, and reasonably so. Like, you know, I know there was a bit of team orders there, but Albon was never actually going to get ahead of Carlos Sainz. In fact, Carlos Sainz would have likely disappeared up the road, and possibly Isaac Hadjar would have got Alex Albon if they hadn't have worked together. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Carlos Sainz can really do in this Williams car. Max Verstappen then, the upgraded Red Bull. An interesting weekend ahead of him. See if he can get even more out of the Red Bull package and actually put himself properly amongst the McLarens. He's been able to do it in qualifying. You know, he's been able to get a couple of pole positions this year, but when it's come to race pace, the McLarens have always had that edge. Verstappen winning out in Japan thanks to the lack of any kind of tyre degradation, and similar to what we saw in Saudi Arabia, the tyres do just seem to go forever at the moment in Formula One. Something, again, that Pirelli need to have a look at, in my opinion. They adapted the tyres for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, but it just still didn't work in terms of the compounds that were there to be used. And Max Verstappen, a 127.9, puts himself top of the timing sheets. Yuki Tsunoda 1.2 seconds off, so hopefully not an actual respective at time from Tsunoda. Carlos Sainz also 8.5 tenths of a second adrift of his old teammate back when they were both very young in the sister Red Bull team. And the top two for the moment until Alex Albon comes across the line and puts in a 128.4. So finds 4 tenths of a second on his teammate in that first run. Of course, medium tyres have to be used in this first sprint qualifying session. It is medium tyres until we get to SQ3. So will kind of have an impact on whether or not we have any drivers really able to click with the medium tyres. We'll have to wait and see. Is that an F1 Lego McLaren above my head? It is. It was a very nice time putting that together. Wow, that must have been a couple of years now. I did put it together all on a stream. If you want to look that up on the channel, there is a 10-hour stream of me going from nothing to full Formula One Lego car. Charles Leclerc then, not particularly quick in the first and second sectors when compared to Verstappen's first and second sectors so far. But Lewis Hamilton getting closer, goes second fastest. I'm watching Charles Leclerc at the moment just to see. No, it does go slower than Hamilton. I think it was that first sector lost a tenth, second sector pretty comparable. Final sector pretty comparable. So it was that just that first sector really for Charles Leclerc that went a little bit awry for the Monegasque compared to his teammate. Hamilton 2.5 tenths though behind Verstappen. Here come the McLarens, and this is where I'd like to see Lando Norris go straight to the top of the timing sheets. Thank you very much, Lando, a 127.8. It's just under a tenth quicker than Verstappen, but good enough for now for me. All I want to see is some McLarens at the top of the timing sheet, and will make my week a hell of a lot better than it has been. Max Verstappen still second fastest. Oscar Piastri goes third fastest. 2.5 tenths of his teammate. Was quicker than Norris in the only free practice session that we've had this weekend. Piastri was top of the timing sheets. Which app am I using for this data? I'm using Multiviewer. You do have to have F1 TV to use it. But apart from that, it is completely free. So if you have F1 TV, you can get Multiviewer completely for free. Antonelli, hello, goes top of the timing sheets. 127.8 from him. 0.03 of a second quicker than Lando Norris's time. And George Russell only 5th fastest. So Antonelli really flying there to begin with in this first qualifying session. Of course, we are only really looking for those bottom 5 drivers. Isaac Hadjar yet to have set a lap time, but Jack Doohan, Yuki Tsunoda, Gabriel Bortoletto, and Ollie Behrman, the 5 drivers that we should really be keeping an eye on at this point. The 5 slowest drivers will drop out of this first qualifying session, 15 advancing into the second part. Gabriel Bortoletto on the radio. Ooh, right side touched the wall on the exit of turn 16. He's on the radio straight away just to get that checked. And Charles Leclerc was also, according to their statistics, 0 centimeters away from the wall at turn 16. So the driver's starting to find the absolute precision that you need through that middle to end part of the lap. Love Lando's helmet. Oh yeah, absolutely. I really like the beach ball. I think of the 3 ball helmets that he's had so far, I think for me, the beach ball is still the best one. Then the disco ball, and then the basketball. But I'd love to know your Lando Norris ball tier list. Oh! And there's an Alpine that didn't quite get out of the garage in the right angle and nearly bumped itself into the pit wall. That's a little bit embarrassing, but there we are. The engineers managing to rush out and come to the rescue and move that Alpine out of the way of everybody else. But yeah, I think my tier list of Lando Miami ball helmets, and I'm hoping it's a thing that he keeps going with, because he's got to run out eventually, right? How many balls are there that are related to Miami in tenuous ways? So I understood the basketball. I got the beach ball. The disco ball, is Miami known for disco? I know that he said it was because of the McLaren win and the fact that they went out and celebrated the win. So they had a party after the Miami win, and that was sort of why he had the disco ball. But, you know, how tenuous are these links allowed to get when it comes to the ball helmets that Lando Norris is going to keep bringing to every Miami Grand Prix until 2041? So he's got a lot of balls to be finding, is all I'm saying. We're going into the final couple of minutes of this first sprint qualifying session. Also, what do we think of the new thumbnails for the live streams? Are we pro them? Are we wishing that the old ones were back? I kind of just had a little bit of a weird time where I was on a train and decided to reorganize how the thumbnails looked for the live streams because I had nothing else to do and no internet. So I'd like to know if you think it's an upgrade or think it's a downgrade. There's a baseball. Very true. Yeah, got to do a baseball. You could try and do an American football, but it's the wrong kind of shape, isn't it? But maybe, you know, tenuous links are getting tenuous. Here we are then. Antonelli still top of the timing sheets. Lando Norris second, Max Verstappen third as it stands. But we're looking at the other end of the grid, really. Hulkenberg, Lawson, Stroll, the 3 drivers just about making it through. Doohan, Tsunoda, Bortoletto, Behrman, and Hadjar, the 5 drivers that need to improve. Hulkenberg and Stroll on laps right now, so they're going to be hoping to get themselves a little bit further away from the drop zone before the 5 behind Like Jack Doohan and Yuki Tsunoda are both on outlaps. So is Ollie Behrman is on an outlap as well. I think Isaac Hadjar is just coming around at the bottom of your screens towards turn 11. You can see Isaac Hadjar coming up there. I'm pro the new. Thank you. Appreciate that. Love that. Thumbnail's epic. Beautiful. That's all I wanted. Just a little bit of group. Oh, here we go. Lance Stroll, can he improve? No, stays 15th fastest. Nico Hulkenberg goes up to 9th. Takes the checkered flag. Jack Doohan and Yuki Tsunoda don't get there. They don't even get to start their lap. Gabriel Bortoleto doesn't improve. Ollie Behrman didn't make the line. And Isaac Hadjar is the only driver then that might be able to get himself out of that bottom 5. Is Lance Stroll going to have another Q1 exit added to his list? Isaac Hadjar, it's not too bad in the first and second sectors, will go forwards and will improve. Isaac Hadjar goes to 8th fastest and drops Lance Stroll. That was pretty horrendous from the drivers at the bottom there. Doohan, Tsunoda, and Behrman all missed the checkered flag. So they didn't get across the line in time. At the end of the 12 minutes, if you cross the line, you're not allowed to complete your lap afterwards. And they all were trying to be the last driver to cross the line, to sort of have the most track in front of them and the clearest air, but it just didn't happen. Really, really poor from the Alpine of Doohan and the Red Bull of Tsunoda in particular. Ollie Behrman, I think, will be pretty damn frustrated with that also. Liam Lawson can see himself a tiny bit lucky in that none of those drivers managed to make it before the checkered flag, meaning he slots into 15th place and manages to get himself through. Here's an onboard with Lando Norris, possibly a Red Bull in the way, and Lando Norris not very happy. And saying that he got held up by Max Verstappen. I mean, both of them still through. George Russell, though, and Kimi Antonelli topping the timing sheets. Is it going to be a Russell Antonelli front row? Alex Albon third as well in the Williams behind. Oh, and it was Yuki Tsunoda was actually held up by his teammate. He was held up by Verstappen at the final corner. And Tsunoda then didn't make it across the line. Behrman then came behind Tsunoda as well and didn't make it across the line in time. So all of those drivers, basically 3 of those 5 drivers that are now out in Doohan, Tsunoda and Behrman, basically are only out because they just mistimed getting out on the track. Wow. That is pretty embarrassing. Yeah. Jack Doohan on the radio is not very happy about it. And you can understand why. You know, he's under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of chat about Franco Colapinto over the last week. And Jack Doohan now sort of able to share a bit of that frustration and maybe show that that pressure is... I mean, it's not really his fault, was it? They did just send him out so late, was the thing. Oh, and Liam Lawson bouncing around over turns 14 and 15. Didn't matter in the end, as he did manage to still get himself through, but Lawson sliding around in that beautiful pink RB car. Max penalty for impeding another driver. He wasn't like that far in the way. He wasn't like, oh, with the Lando one. Max is in the way of Lando, then in the way of Yuki. I don't think either of those were like massively dramatic incidents though, or dangerous. Usually they only give impeding penalties if it's like particularly dangerous in one way or another as well. So I think they will be okay, but don't hold me to it. Maybe we've seen the FIA do some weirder things in the past, so possibly they will throw a penalty at somebody. But yeah, Tsunoda is the one I'd like to see an onboard of, just to see how far actually was he from coming across the line? Because he was at the lead of that pack. So if one driver was going to make it to the checkered flag, it would have likely been Tsunoda. But do I think Tsunoda will get more than P10 in the race? The sprint race from 18th place? Absolutely not. Can't see it happening, to be honest with you. In the actual race, we'll see how qualifying goes. I mean, they upgraded the Red Bull car, and Tsunoda still down in 18th place. And I know you can say, well, he didn't get his final lap, but realistically, if you're in one of those top teams, your banker lap should get you through Q1. You know, Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, they all got through without really breaking a sweat. If you're in one of those top teams, you should be there pretty comfortably. You know, you're looking at Leclerc as the closest to Tsunoda out of those top 4 teams. And you've even got, you know, the Williams is looking absolutely electric, to be fair. But the Williams is in 3rd and 5th place after that first qualifying session. But just to summarize, Lance Stroll, Jack Doohan, Yuki Tsunoda, Gabriel Bortoleto, and Ollie Behrman, the 5 drivers that we lost in the first qualifying session. 10 minutes on the board once more, and we will have 10 minutes worth of qualifying in this second qualifying session. Again, just medium tyres available to the guys out on track. And will that be the kind of catalyst that gets Antonelli and George Russell to the top of the timing sheets again? Russell and Antonelli ahead of Alex Albon, Norris and Sainz, Piastri, Verstappen, of course, up there. But Hamilton, Ocon, Leclerc will be the 3 that are really contemplating whether or not they'll be able to make it through, because Gasly, Hadjar, Alonso, Hulkenberg, and Lawson, who are through in 11th place through to 15th, they need to improve if they're going to make it through into the final part of qualifying. What are the investigations going on? That is a great point. Should we have a little look at some investigations? Investigation cars 55, 63, 23, 35, failing to follow the race director's maximum delta times. Ooh. So these are all maximum delta times, but they're going to be investigated after the session. And then Hulkenberg and Behrman are an incident involving the 2 of them for impeding. So Hulkenberg or Behrman impeded the other. So we'll keep that going and see who was there. But yeah, Bortoleto, Albon, Lawson, Sainz, Russell are all going to be investigated after the session for their race director failing to follow the race director's instructions. That maximum delta that you're allowed. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, a few investigations coming up there. Ooh, as I then just close it. Silly. A few investigations popping in there. Be interesting to see which side of the coin that ends up falling on. There's a lot of drivers there. 8 minutes, 40 seconds left to go in this one. Drivers now starting to come around. We'll see some lap times coming our way. Alonso is going to be the first one to set the standard. Verstappen, Antonelli, Russell, Albon, Hamilton, Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, all out on track at the moment. Still a bit of a queue in the pit lane, though, so more drivers to come very swiftly. But they're just trying to give themselves that little bit of space to the driver in front and allow them to hopefully get a nice run in some clean air as Fernando Alonso pulls into the pits and then also has to go to the weighbridge. So not sure why Fernando Alonso just did an outlap there, but then didn't go around for the rest. Interesting. Max Verstappen then is actually going to be the first driver to put a lap time on the board. Let's have a little look at what Verstappen can do. A 28.9 through the first sector. Antonelli and Russell, the two drivers behind. So let's see whether or not the Mercedes cars can keep themselves at the top of the timing boards. Antonelli not quicker than Verstappen through the first sector, just a couple attempts adrift. George Russell, a 10th of Max Verstappen as well. So Verstappen has the advantage in the first sector over the two Mercedes drivers at the moment. Second sector from Max Verstappen is a 33.6 as he's now coming down that back straight, which he did get a little bit wrong earlier on when he was in front of his teammate. I don't know whether actually he was trying to get out of the way of Yuki Tsunoda, possibly. But there we are. Kimi Antonelli with a faster middle sector than Max Verstappen. So Verstappen with a 27.7. 25 dead in the final sector. Kimi Antonelli, though, making up a 10th in that middle part of the lap. So depending on this final sector, could be the Mercedes back to the top of the timing sheets, and it is just about by 0.02 of a second. So almost identical laps between the two. But Kimi Antonelli, that final sector was just good enough to get himself above Max Verstappen, despite losing a couple of attempts in the first sector. Alex Albon comes across the line, isn't quite up to the standard of the Red Bull and Mercedes cars ahead of him. He slots into 4th of 4 right now. Lewis Hamilton just coming around the final corner, only 5th fastest from Hamilton at this point in time. 10th and a half off Alex Albon in the Williams. Lando Norris goes quickest in the middle sector and is just coming around the final corner to go top of the timing sheets with a 127.5. And Norris then fastest at the moment up until Oscar Piastri, I thought so, comes across the line. Was just looking very quick in that final sector. Oscar Piastri, a 127.3. Charles Leclerc also jumps up into 6th place. So Albon now in a Ferrari sandwich. And George Russell not liking this tyre. So the medium compound tyre, not to George Russell's liking, even though he was... Maybe it's that set? Because he was quick in Q1. So where do I get these sector times? They are from Multiviewer. And there are lots of investigations for a lot of impeding that was going on. And also a lot of drivers not sticking to the required lap time as Alex Albon goes bumping over. Ooh, I do quite like the Fanta orange. I know it's not Fanta, but because it's orange and it's the same orange as Fanta, the Fanta orange helmet that Alex Albon has got going on this weekend. Although he did just nearly put his Williams in the wall, so maybe he needs a little bit less sugar to calm himself down a touch. 5/10 between the Ferraris. Hamilton just doesn't see him on it, does he? A 10th adrift of Albon, and as you say, 5/10 ahead of Charles Leclerc. It's going to be a tough weekend for Hamilton, it seems like. Once again, you guys voted for Hamilton as the most likely driver to have a bit of a struggle throughout the Miami sprint weekend. And it still just doesn't seem to click for Hamilton, does it, at Ferrari? That sprint win in China, the real shining light amongst some quite mediocre races so far. Ocon, Gasly, Hadjar, Alonso, Hulkenberg, Sainz, and Lawson yet to set meaningful lap times. But a few cars now coming out onto the track once more. And I think a lot of the drivers sort of trying to save some tires. I think tires are going to be a bit of a tricky thing to come by over the course of the Grand Prix weekend, especially when we get into the Grand Prix and whether or not you want to be on the mediums or the hards at various points. Gonna come up a cropper because you do have to use the medium tires for this qualifying session. Gasly just making his way down that back straight. Here's an onboard from Alex Albon. What's gone on here for the Williams? Maybe bumping around on the curbs? No, not so. I think just looking at the... don't know how the Merc is legal, says Alex Albon. A little bit of scouting maybe Alex Albon is doing from the Williams. Don't know what he's talking about specifically, but explains Mexico 2024. Max needs a penalty for impeding. I don't know if he was impeding that much. The problem with, like, often penalties for impeding, they only sort of come into play when it actually affects something. So, like, we often see penalties for impeding if, like, you're impeding a direct rival or you actually get in the way of their flying lap and it costs them. When it just doesn't really matter at the end of the day, like, they just don't seem to give penalties for impeding. So, unlikely. Here we go then. Pierre Gasly coming around the middle part of the lap now. Has yet to set a lap time, but has quite commonly found himself amongst the top 10 over the end of last season, and wasn't the best start to this season, but over the last couple of races it's kind of looked up again. Does bounce off the wall in turn 16 though, Pierre Gasly. But he's not going to get another shot at it. This is the one and only lap for Gasly, unless he can go straight from flying lap to flying lap, which isn't impossible. And Gasly crosses the line, and it is quicker than Hamilton, but it's still 8th fastest and nearly a second off Max Verstappen, who's gone to the top of the timing sheets. Oscar Piastri is currently in the pits, so Piastri isn't going to improve on his time. Lando Norris is coming around the final sector. And Gasly, just a little bit wide at turn 16. That was why that rear right tyre, I think, does kiss the wall. Just seeing it on board. Yeah. Oh, actually, doesn't just kiss the wall. That is a bump with the wall from Pierre Gasly's Alpine. Nico Hülkenberg comes across the start-finish line to take the checkered flag first of anybody and actually goes 7th fastest. So Hamilton is now on the bubble. Lando Norris is going to improve and go quickest. But again, we're not really looking at that part of the track at the moment. We're looking at Esteban Ocon, who comes across the line to go 8th fastest and puts Lewis Hamilton into that bottom 5. Hamilton is on a lap, though, just coming towards turn 9 and turn 10 on your screens, which is at the bottom of the picture. Norris and Leclerc have taken the checkered flag. Here comes Isaac Hadjar to go 7th fastest. That puts Pierre Gasly out. So Gasly is going to be out of it. Alonso then comes across the line to go 7th fastest instead, which then puts Alex Albon down in that bottom 5. But Albon is on a lap. Carlos Sainz is going slowly. And Carlos Sainz, I think, has got a problem because he is not going to set a lap time. That is really frustrating for Carlos Sainz. He is guaranteed to be out after not setting a banker lap. Here comes Kimi Antonelli to go 4th fastest in the Mercedes and guarantee himself a spot in the final part of qualifying. Liam Lawson can't do enough as he takes the checkered flag. And Lewis Hamilton then is the man to watch, and Hamilton does get himself into that top 10. So Hülkenberg drops down into that bottom 5. And it is Hülkenberg, Ocon, Gasly, Lawson, and Sainz who are the 5 drivers who are going to start 11th through 15th place. That was leaving it late by Lewis Hamilton there, but managed to do it. And that's why Carlos Sainz maybe backed out of his lap, because it would have been deleted for track limits anyway. What happened to Carlos? Oh, my goodness. Carlos Sainz, a huge lockup. Turn 15 down there. And he just, that was a big lockup for Carlos Sainz. Sorry, down towards turn 11, I think that was. Carlos Sainz's big lockup. And Lawson on the radio. not very happy at all. And the tides have turned a little. The Mercedes being top of the times, obviously at the end of Q1. Here's that mistake from Lawson that, yeah, completely ruined his lap time right at the end of the lap as well from Liam Lawson. That was turn 17 that he just went super deep into and missed the apex. That's where Liam Lawson went wrong. But as I was saying, the tide seems to have turned a little bit towards the top. Mercedes dropping down, now 4th and 7th fastest instead of being at the top. Only one of the Williamses able to get their way through. Carlos Sainz will be frustrated after a very strong Q1 to not set a fast time during Q2. Norris, Verstappen, Piastri, the top three that we've come to expect throughout the season so far. Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton both make their way through. And then in the mix in the midfield, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Maybe his first point scoring opportunity of the season will come in tomorrow's sprint race. And Isaac Hadjar, who is continuing to have a very, very strong rookie season so far. I'd say Isaac Hadjar, am I sticking my neck out to say that he's had the best start to the season of the 5 rookies? I don't think I'm putting myself too out there. I know Kimi Antonelli has more points on the board, but Kimi Antonelli's in a Mercedes. Isaac Hadjar is looking very strong indeed in that second Red Bull car. And outside of what was an absolute disaster first race, he has very much got there. Your school is on lockdown. Goodness. That is a blast from the past. Why is your school on lockdown? What does that even mean? As in, like, COVID? Hulk nearly dragged us out of Q3. Yeah, Hulkenberg is very solid in qualifying. I mean, we saw that last year where he managed to get the Haas into Q3 a good chunk of the weekends where we were not expecting him to be able to. But Hulkenberg, again, like starting from 11th tomorrow, it's not outside the realms of the possibility. Outside of the realms of possibility. I'm getting that phrase wrong. It's been a long week. It's not impossible that Nico Hulkenberg could get himself into the top 8 and add to his 6 points that he's got on the board so far this year. Alonso is such a versatile driver. Oh, yeah. Well, in many people's eyes, he is the absolute best driver ever, you know, or he's always talked about as one of the most talented drivers, isn't he? I think just because he doesn't quite have the accolades. I know 2 world championships, so a lot of accolades, but maybe not the accolades of, you know, your Schumachers, your Hamiltons. I think Alonso's kind of in that debate of the most talented driver ever. I agree with Hadjar being... Hadjar's been performing every week. Yeah, I think Hadjar, especially just because coming into this year, I just don't think he had the same kind of, maybe it is almost media coverage behind him. And I don't think people were as excited for Hadjar as maybe any of the other rookies, right? Because we had that kind of Kimi Antonelli is in a Mercedes, big step up for him, Lewis Hamilton's shoes to fill. Like that was kind of a big talking point. We had Ollie Behrman, the fact that he'd been in a few races last year, Ferrari, obviously on the hunt for that Ferrari seat, possibly replaces Lewis Hamilton in the future at the Ferrari team. So like we had a lot of buzz around Ollie Behrman. A lot of buzz around Gabriel Bortoleto because he was the Formula 2 champion. A lot of talk, maybe not buzz, but a lot of talk about Jack Doohan because of the Franco Colapinto scenario. And Isaac Hadjar just kind of was. I think it's maybe because he was the last rookie to be announced as well. And he was only announced because we ended up having Sergio Perez drop. So like if Sergio Perez would have had a good year last year, Isaac Hadjar wouldn't have been on the grid. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Isaac Hadjar just didn't really have that talk and hype and adulation around him, but actually seems to be kind of clicking better than most of the other rookies out there. Like he seems to really be getting in that RB car and every single weekend just delivering. So yeah, underrated, I would say. And as for best rookie, Kimi might disagree. That's the thing, isn't it? Kimi's the only I think it's Kimi or Hadjar as the best rookie so far this season. Because, yeah, Kimi's doing a pretty good job. Considering a lot of propaganda. Propaganda around who? Interesting. Or just the rookies in general. But anyway, that was my Isaac Hadjar appreciation moment. Let's get into Q3. Cars are back out on track. Again, we won't have any respective times to be looking at for a moment. Max Verstappen is going to be the first driver to set a flying lap. Soft compound tyres are finally allowed to be used. Hadjar might be the strongest rookie out of the new crop. I think so. Raving Lunatic. That would be my argument, but I can see how people would go various different ways with it. Alonso's the best rookie, as Kimi said. Oscar Piastri, the man of the moment. Top of the Drivers' Championship at the moment. Toto Wolff in the new look Mercedes kit for this weekend. Not for me. Bit too much going on, if I'm honest. I like a slightly more plain look to my clothing, but I can understand why people would enjoy it. What investigation is on Max? It's going to be looked at after the session, so it won't affect him now anyway. But it is... Is it going to load for me? There we go. The maximum delta time. So the same infringement as basically everyone else has got, to be honest. It's only Hulkenberg and Behrman that were under investigation for possibly impeding. And that's been dealt with, so no further investigation. All of the other drivers here, so Verstappen, Bortoleto, Albon, Lawson, Sainz, Russell, they're all under investigation for not meeting the race director's maximum delta time. So when you're on a slow lap, your slow lap can only be so slow, right? So if you are slower than slow, then you are not allowed to actually go that slow. If that makes sense. Max Verstappen, though, is setting a fast lap. Let's pay attention to it. Russell, 0.04 of a second slower than Verstappen through the first sector. It's going to be just these two battling it out for now, as nobody else is out on the track. Verstappen then sets a 33.3 middle sector. Can Russell bounce back from that and set the standard in the middle sector as well? Yes, he can. So now it is advantage Russell as he goes a lot quicker through the middle sector. Max Verstappen comes across the start-finish line for a 1:27 dead. And Russell has the advantage, but still needs to be pretty much spot on through the final sector. Here he comes, George Russell. It's going to be a tenth or two at best. And it is a couple of tenths, actually. It's a very quick final sector from Russell. Did even better than I was expecting through that final sector, did George Russell. And the Mercedes absolutely flying down that back straight by the looks of things. A 1:26.7 for George Russell. And he is looking quick, isn't it? That Mercedes car is just looking fast this weekend. It does have a few Grand Prix every year, doesn't it? That Mercedes car, where it does just seem to click into gear. Maybe this is the one. Sally reminding you to leave a like and subscribe. That'd be absolutely amazing. We have got just over 500 people, which is really good for a sprint. A lot of people just skip the sprint streams, if I'm honest. So thank you guys for joining. I massively appreciate it. And if you could hit the like button, it does massively help out the channel. Subscribe if you're new. We're also trying to get to 30 members on the channel by the end of the year. We've gained 19 already, and we're only 5 races in. So if you want to become a member, get involved in the members-only post-race show, you know what to do. Hit that join button below. Oscar Piastri stares dead-eyed at his engineer, ready to go out onto the track. What happened to Sainz? A big lock-up on his flying lap, went off the track, and yeah, the lap was effectively done from that point. He went so far adrift that he was never going to be able to save that lap. And here we go then. Alex Albon is going to be the first driver out of the pits and is just making his way through to turn 4. We've got Fernando Alonso coming around as well. Max Verstappen, I think, is going to go straight away for another flying lap here. So Verstappen just coming around turn 1. Lewis Hamilton is going to come out of the pits ahead of him. Why is everyone on mediums? So mediums were mandatory for Q1 and Q2. They will swap onto softs now as they come out for this final part of qualifying. So it's just because Leclerc and Hadjar haven't gone past the detector yet. They will, as soon as they go past the detector in the pits, will swap to... Oh, has Leclerc gone out on mediums? Surely not. No, he hasn't. I thought he got to the end of the pit lane there and it hadn't changed, but there we are. Leclerc is on the soft compound tyres. Keep an eye on Alex Albon then, who's going to be the first driver of the next pack to come across the line. George Russell has made his way into the pits. So Russell done and dusted. 126.7 is going to be all she wrote for George Russell. So sits on top of the pile for now. Has 2.5 tenths over Verstappen, but there are 8 drivers. Effectively, this is a one-shot qualifying for because everybody else has yet to have set a lap time, and there's just over a minute left on the clock. Here comes Lewis Hamilton down towards turn 17 as he's going to get going on his flying lap. Albon has already come across the start-finish line. So has Fernando Alonso. Max Verstappen is just coming down the back straight ahead of Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli, I think, will try and leave the Red Bull a little bit of a gap just to get some dirty air out of the way. Verstappen comes across the start-finish line. Antonelli also. So here we are then. Norris, Piastri, Leclerc and Hadjar all bunching up. And I'm a little bit worried that they're not going to get across the line. Charles Leclerc and Isaac Hadjar are going to be in a real pickle here. Piastri is going to get across the line. Charles Leclerc has got 4 seconds to get across the start-finish line. And I think has just made it. Isaac Hadjar is going to be dead close. I think also maybe within a second or so. But let's focus on the drivers going now. Max Verstappen has gone quickest in the first sector once more. Alex Albon has gone quickest of anybody through the middle sector so far as well. So Albon looking absolutely astonishingly quick in the middle sector, but final sector, not quite there either. Albon only goes 3rd fastest and isn't able to trouble Russell and Verstappen. Here comes Fernando Alonso behind the Williams car into 4th place. Lewis Hamilton across the line goes 2nd fastest. So Hamilton drops Verstappen down to 3rd, but Hamilton is finished and Verstappen is now going to come across the line to go quickest. Verstappen takes provisional pole with a 126.7. Here comes Kimi Antonelli. Wow! 2.5 tenths quicker than Verstappen. Goodness me, Verstappen. But here we are then. Norris comes around the final corner. He's a 10th off Antonelli. So Antonelli goes quickest still. Piastri was quickest through the middle sector and also can't touch Antonelli. Antonelli is 0.04 of a second quicker than Piastri. Charles Leclerc comes across the line 6th fastest, and Isaac Hadjar can only go 9th. Kimi Antonelli, take a bow. It is his first pole position in Formula One. And what a debut season. He had to do it, didn't he? Just as I was talking about how good Isaac Hadjar has been and whether or not Isaac Hadjar could possibly be considered the best rookie so far, Kimi Antonelli comes in, absolutely smashes it, puts his Mercedes car ahead of both of the McLarens and puts himself on pole position for the sprint race tomorrow. Stunning from Kimi Antonelli. They have done, it does feel like Mercedes have got something special on their hands, doesn't it? I know there was a lot of hype around him coming into this season. We were maybe not underwhelmed, but didn't get to see everything that he had available to him in Formula 2 last year. He skipped Formula 3. There was a debate around whether or not he was coming into Formula 1 too quickly. There was a debate around whether or not he'd be able to adapt to the pressure of being in a top team straight away. And my goodness me, he has proved any doubter wrong. He has shown he has the class and caliber of a driver that is 10 years his age. My goodness me. What a qualifying session from Kimi Antonelli. Oscar Piastri will start beside him in second place. We saw, though, Oscar Piastri start second in Saudi Arabia and turn that into a win. So don't count your chickens yet, Mercedes fans. The McLarens are going to be right there throughout the sprint. Lando Norris will start in third place in the podium positions. Max Verstappen, fourth fastest in this one. George Russell went for it early, ended up fifth fastest. You know, he maybe thought that was good enough for pole. 3/10 off of his teammate, George Russell, in the end, so not quite where he would have expected to be in comparison to his teammate. The two Ferraris then slotted in. Again, the two Ferraris just slowest of those top four teams at the moment. Albon, Hadjar, Alonso then behind. Albon starting in the point-scoring places. The only problem that they've got, obviously, the top 8 only score points in the sprint race, so Hadjar and Alonso will be right on his tail and battling for that final point-scoring place. Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, Liam Lawson, and Carlos Sainz were the 5 drivers to drop out in sprint qualifying 2. So they were 11th fastest down to 15th fastest, and they will start there on tomorrow's grid. And then it was Lance Stroll, Jack Doohan, Yuki Tsunoda, Gabriel Bortoleto, and Ollie Behrman who dropped out in the first qualifying session of today's sprint qualifying. Wow. I just don't even know what to say, man. The rookies are flying. Kimi Antonelli is on it. And you just love to see it. You just love to see it. Especially when, you know, there's a few of the old guard in there as well. Hamilton and Alonso, your drivers in your 40s, mixing it with Antonelli and Hadjar, still in their teens. Like, it is just such a mix-up on the grid right now. And the quality of this grid is so strong. Just, I'm hyped. I'm just loving Formula One at the moment. I think it's got everything that it needs. Oscar Piastri, current World Championship leader, congratulates Kimi Antonelli as he takes his first pole position in Formula One. Only 6 races into his Formula One career. Need I say more? I'm going to disappear, though. Thank you guys so much. I told you that Hadjar would be the best. I know, Antonio. I always jinx myself. I don't know why I say it. I don't know why I bother. But I'm going to leave you all there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And I will see you tomorrow for another couple of live streams. We'll be live for the sprint race itself and then for the qualifying of the actual Grand Prix. Will we see another pole position from Kim?